My son-in-law filed for my incapacity, thinking an old judge is easy prey, and he could seize my house and assets without a fight. But in court, my 11-year-old grandson suddenly asked the judge, "Your Honor, may I show you something my dad doesn't know about?" The judge allowed it. As the video started, the entire courtroom froze in stunned silence. His betrayal won't go unpunished. Consequences are coming. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now. I returned from my Sunday morning walk to find my study door ajar. Not unusual in itself, this was my house after all, but something in the angle of that half-open door made my chest tighten. Maybe it was the way the morning light caught the edge of it. Or maybe it was instinct honed over 30 years on the bench. Either way, I knew something was wrong before I even stepped inside. Derek, my son-in-law, sat behind my desk like he owned it. My daughter, Caroline, stood beside him, her arms crossed, avoiding my eyes. Between them, spread across the mahogany surface I'd polished for decades, were my financial documents, bank statements, property deeds, investment portfolios, the private papers I kept in the locked drawer of my desk. "Good morning, Edward," Derek said, not bothering to look up. He spoke my name without the courtesy of calling me by anything warmer. 3 years they'd been living in my house, rent-free I might add, and he still couldn't manage a simple dad or even Edward Sr. "What are you doing?" I kept my voice level. 30 years as a judge taught me to control my tone even when my blood was starting to simmer. "Someone needs to take care of these things," Derek replied, finally glancing up with that smile that never quite reached his eyes. "While you can still sign them, that is." The implication hung in the air like smoke. While I can still sign them, as if I were already incapable, as if senility were creeping up on me like fog over the Willamette River, ready to claim my mind at any moment. "I'm 67, Derek, not senile. I've managed these accounts just fine for 40 years. Have you though?" He leaned back in my chair, with the confidence of a man who thought he'd already won. "You forgot your doctor's appointment 3 weeks ago. Caroline had to remind you to take your medication last month. And yesterday, you couldn't remember where you parked at the grocery store." I looked at my daughter. "Caroline?" She finally met my eyes, but only for a second. "Dad, we're just concerned. You're getting older and managing all this." She gestured vaguely at the papers. "It's a lot for one person." "Interesting," I said, letting a hint of irony color my words. "Your concern about my capabilities seems to have materialized right around the time Portland's housing market hit a new peak. My house is worth what now? $850,000? Derek's jaw tightened. I'd touched a nerve. "Good. This isn't about money," he said, his voice hardening. "This is about your well-being." "My well-being?" I repeated. "In my own house with my own money that I earned over a 30-year career on the bench. A career that ended 4 years ago, old man." The mask slipped just for a moment. I saw the real Derek, the one who appeared when he thought no one important was watching. "Derek," Caroline said quietly, but she didn't contradict him. I stood there feeling something shift inside me. It wasn't anger exactly, it was colder than that, more calculating. This wasn't a family disagreement. This was a threat. "Get out of my study," I said. "We're trying to help you." "Out now." Derek stood slowly, gathering the papers with deliberate care, as if to demonstrate that he was the reasonable one here. "We'll talk about this later when you're calmer. Maybe we should schedule that appointment with Dr. Morrison. After all, get you checked out." "I don't need checking out." That's exactly what someone who needs help would say. He smiled again, that empty smile. "We'll take care of you, Edward, whether you like it or not." They left. I stood alone in my study, surrounded by shelves of law books I'd collected over 3 decades, feeling the weight of those last words. Whether you like it or not, that wasn't concern. That was a declaration of intent. I noticed movement in the hallway. My 11-year-old grandson, Ethan, stood there, pressed against the wall where they hadn't seen him. Our eyes met. He looked scared, but there was something else in his expression, something that looked like determination. He disappeared down the hallway before I could speak. That night, I lay awake in bed, unable to shut off my mind. The scene played on repeat, but now I was noticing details I'd missed in the moment. The way Derek had looked at those property deeds, the way Caroline had flinched when I mentioned the house's value, the casual cruelty of calling me old man. This wasn't a conversation that had gotten out of hand. This was planned. They'd gone through my desk, found my financial documents, and were building a case. But for what? The answer came to me as the digital clock flicked to 2:17 a.m. They wanted control, not just of the house but of me. And in Oregon, there was only one legal way to get that kind of control over a competent adult: a guardianship petition. Declare me incompetent. Assign Derek as my guardian. And everything I owned would effectively become his to manage, to liquidate, to take. I sat up in bed, wide awake now. They were going to try to have me declared mentally incompetent, and I was going to stop them. Monday morning arrived with Portland's typical gray drizzle. I sat at my kitchen table nursing cold coffee. Yesterday's scene wouldn't leave my mind, but now it was pulling other memories with it like a thread unraveling a sweater. 3 weeks ago, that doctor's appointment Derek mentioned, I hadn't forgotten it. I'd arrived at Dr. Harrison's office on time, only to be told it had been cancelled. The receptionist showed me a message, a call from Edward Bennett requesting cancellation. But I hadn't made that call. When I'd come home confused, Derek had been sympathetic. "You probably just forgot you called, Edward. It happens." That concerned look, the way Caroline had nodded agreement, then the medication incident. I'd been taking the same blood pressure medication for 5 years. Suddenly Caroline was hovering every morning, insisting on helping me. "Just to make sure you get the right amount, Dad. We worry about you mixing things up." I hadn't mixed anything up, but every time I'd said so, they'd exchange those looks, the kind that said, "See, he's getting confused." And my address book, the leather-bound one from my early days on the bench, filled with phone numbers of colleagues, old friends, professional contacts, it had vanished from my study a week ago. When I'd asked Derek if he'd seen it, he'd barely looked up. "No idea, Edward. Maybe you misplaced it." I set down my mug, my hand trembling not from age, from anger. They'd been isolating me, systematically cutting me off, creating incidents they could point to as evidence of incompetence. How long had this been going on? The doorbell rang. Through the window I saw Martha Evans, my neighbor from across the street, holding a pie dish covered in foil. "Morning, Edward." Martha was a retired nurse who noticed everything. "Made too much apple pie yesterday. Thought you might want some." "Martha, you're a lifesaver." I took the pie, genuinely grateful. "Come in. I'll make fresh coffee." She followed me to the kitchen, chattering about her garden and the neighborhood watch meeting. Normal things that felt surreal after yesterday. "Oh, speaking of the neighborhood," she said as I poured coffee. "I've been meaning to ask, are you selling?" My hand froze. "Selling your house? I saw that real estate agent here last week, Tuesday, I think. He was with Derek taking pictures of the front. I figured you were downsizing. Makes sense at our age though. I'll miss having you across the street." The coffee pot clinked against the counter as I set it down too hard. "What did you say?" The real estate agent, nice young man. Had one of those fancy cameras. Derek was showing him around the outside taking pictures. I waved, but I don't think they saw me. A real estate agent last Tuesday photographing my house with Derek. "Martha," I said carefully. "Did you hear what they were talking about?" "Well, I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but you know how sound carries. Derek was on his phone at one point. I caught something about quick sale and paperwork moving fast. I assumed you were all planning to move somewhere smaller together." The room felt smaller suddenly. They weren't just planning to control my assets. They were already shopping my house around before any guardianship petition, before any legal authority. "Edward, you okay? You've gone pale." "I'm fine, Martha. Thank you for the pie and for telling me about the agent." After she left, I stood in my kitchen staring at nothing. The pieces were fitting together. The cancelled appointments, the medication help, the missing address book, and now this. Derek making plans to sell my house. They weren't worried about my competence. They were planning to take everything. I walked to my study, closed the door, and locked it. Then I pulled out my phone, the smartphone Caroline kept saying was too complicated for me, and started making a list. Every incident I could remember. Every time they told me I was confused when I knew I wasn't. 30 years as a district court judge, I knew how the system worked. I'd seen it before, family members trying to gain guardianship over aging relatives to control their assets. Some cases were legitimate. Others were pure greed dressed up as concern. This was greed. And greed made people careless. They'd already made mistakes. The real estate agent was a big one. You don't shop property around before you have legal authority unless you're confident that authority is coming. They were confident. That was their first mistake. I opened a new note on my phone, counter strategy. They wanted to play games with my competence. Fine. But they'd forgotten something important. I'd spent 3 decades watching people lie in my courtroom. I knew every trick, every manipulation, every legal loophole. I knew how to recognize a weak case. Whatever they were planning, they'd need evidence I was incompetent, medical records, witness statements, documentation. I could fight evidence with evidence. I could document everything they were doing. I could protect my assets. I could find allies. The question was, could I do it before they made their move? My phone buzzed, a text from Derek. Set up appointment with Dr. Morrison for Friday. New patient evaluation. Be ready at 2 p.m. I stared at the message. Dr. Morrison, a doctor I'd never heard of. A new patient evaluation I hadn't requested. They were already moving. I typed back fine. But I was thinking something else entirely. Game on, Derek. Game on. Wednesday morning I woke with purpose. The anger had crystallized into something sharper. If Derek wanted legal games, he'd picked the wrong opponent. 30 years on the bench had taught me every move in this particular chess match. First stop, the bank. I walked in under the pretense of paying bills, playing the amiable retiree. But once I sat with the branch manager, a woman I'd known professionally for years, my tone changed. I need to modify access on my accounts, I said quietly. Any transaction over $5,000 requires my physical signature. No exceptions, no power of attorney overrides. She looked at me with concern. Edward, is everything okay? Just being cautious, family matters. She understood. Banks see this scenario more often than people think. She processed the changes without further questions. Walking out, I felt my first small victory. Derek could try all he wanted. He wouldn't touch my money without me knowing. At home, I locked myself in my study and downloaded a call recording app. Oregon was a one-party consent state. I could legally record any conversation I was part of. The app was simple, discreet, activated with a single tap. Every interaction with Derek or Caroline from here on would be documented. Thursday I arranged to meet Richard Hayes, an old colleague, at a coffee shop downtown. Richard had specialized in family law before retirement. We made small talk, but I steered the conversation where I needed it. Richard, hypothetically speaking, I said casually, what would it take to have someone declared incompetent in Oregon these days? He leaned back, considering. It's not easy. You need substantial medical evidence, psychiatric evaluations, cognitive testing, documentation of inability to care for oneself. And even then, it goes before a judge who's going to be skeptical. Why do you ask? Just curious. Read an article. Richard was sharp. He studied my face. Edward, if someone's coming after you, know this, Oregon law requires clear and convincing evidence. The burden of proof is high. And if someone files a frivolous petition, judges don't take kindly to it. Good to know, thanks, Richard. Walking back to my car, I felt something close to satisfaction. My suspicions were confirmed. Whatever Derek was planning, he'd need more than his word and a sympathetic doctor to pull it off. Friday evening Derek made his move. We were sitting at dinner, a tense affair these days. Caroline pushed food around her plate. Ethan ate in silence. Derek had that particular expression he wore when he thought he was clever. Edward, I've set up a doctor's appointment for you next week, he announced. Dr. Morrison, Monday at 2, full physical and cognitive evaluation. I looked up from my pasta. Dr. Morrison, I've been seeing Dr. Harrison for 15 years. Dr. Morrison is a specialist. Given your recent confusion, I thought it wise to get a comprehensive assessment. That patronizing tone, like talking to a child. Caroline wouldn't meet my eyes. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he kept his head down. How considerate, I said, letting just enough irony slip through. I'll be there. Derek smiled, thinking he'd won something. Idiot, he just confirmed everything. This wasn't about my health, it was building a medical case against me. Dr. Morrison was either in on it or being used. Either way, I now knew their timeline had accelerated. After dinner I went to the kitchen to make tea. I heard soft footsteps behind me. Grandpa. Ethan's voice was barely above a whisper. I turned. My 11-year-old grandson stood there looking older than his years, his face serious. What is it, Ethan? He glanced toward the living room where his parents were watching television, then stepped closer. I know something you should know. My chest tightened. What do you know? They say bad things about you when you're not around, Dad mostly, but Mom too. They think I'm not paying attention, but I am. He pulled his tablet from under his arm. I recorded them on this. I started a few months ago because it felt wrong what they were saying. I stared at this brave kid who looked so much like his mother used to before she married Derek. What did you record? Conversations, phone calls. Dad talks about the house a lot, about you being too old, about needing to take care of things. He looked up at me with eyes that had seen too much. Grandpa, are they trying to take your house? I knelt down to his level, putting my hands on his shoulders. Ethan, listen to me carefully. What you did recording those conversations, that might be very important. But I need you to keep that tablet safe and hidden.
Can you do that? He nodded solemnly.
I keep it in my backpack under my textbooks. They never look there.
Good, and Ethan, thank you.
You're braver than you know. As he left, I stood in the kitchen feeling something I hadn't felt in days: hope.
Not just hope, ammunition.
The game had changed. I wasn't just defending anymore. Now I had evidence. Now I had an ally. And now I had a plan forming. Derek wanted to play doctor games, fine.
I'd play along.
But I'd be ready with my own medical evaluation from a real specialist, not his pet physician. I'd document everything. And when the time came, when he made his official move, I'd be waiting with evidence he didn't know existed. That night lying in bed, I thought about Ethan, 11 years old and already having to be more mature than his parents. It broke my heart, but it also steeled my resolve. This wasn't just about my house anymore. It was about showing the boy that standing up for what's right matters, that justice exists, that bad actions have consequences. Derek had made a critical mistake. He'd underestimated me because of my age. But worse, he'd completely overlooked his own son. Children see everything, they hear everything. And in this digital age, they can record everything. I smiled in the darkness. Game on indeed. Saturday morning arrived with unexpected sunshine. Derek and Caroline announced they were going shopping. The irony wasn't lost on me, already spending money in their heads, renovating a house they didn't own yet. As soon as their car pulled out, Ethan appeared in my study doorway. They'll be gone at least 2 hours. Dad always takes forever shopping.
Come in, lock the door.
He did, then placed his tablet on the desk between us like evidence at a trial.
Show me, I said.
For the next hour I watched and listened. Ethan had dozens of recordings spanning 3 months. He'd been meticulous, dating each one, adding context notes. The kid was a natural investigator. The first video showed Derek on the phone pacing in the backyard, audio clear. Yeah, guardianship petition. Once that's in place, the house can go on the market immediately. The old man won't know what hit him.
No, Caroline's on board. She does what I tell her. My jaw clenched.
Another clip showed Caroline in the kitchen talking to someone. Dad's just becoming such a burden. He can't manage things anymore. Alan thinks we need to step in legally. It's for his own good, really. The lies came so easily, that hurt more than Derek's cruelty. But the worst was 2 weeks ago. Derek had been yelling at me behind my study door. I remembered. After I'd closed the door, the recording caught him screaming in the hallway. Stupid old man, soon you won't have a choice. Soon everything will be mine, and you'll be sitting in whatever nursing home I choose. Ethan had heard all of it and been brave enough to document it. This is incredible, Ethan, I said quietly. This is exactly what I need to fight them, to protect us both. I looked at him seriously. You understand what this means? If I use these recordings, your parents will know you made them. He met my eyes without flinching. I don't care, what they're doing is wrong. You taught me that wrong things should be stopped. I had to look away. This kid had more integrity than both his parents combined. Keep these safe, I said. Don't make any more recordings. From now on, that's my job. Monday came. Time for Dr. Morrison's appointment. The office was downtown. Dr. Morrison was young, maybe 40, with eager efficiency. The examination was thorough, but the questions: do you ever forget where you've placed things? Sometimes, doesn't everyone? Do you have difficulty remembering appointments? No, I keep a calendar. My phone and my jacket recorded everything. Do family members express concern about your memory? There it was. My son-in-law has mentioned it. Each question carefully designed to establish cognitive decline, but Dr. Morrison didn't know I was paying attention to the pattern. This wasn't neutral evaluation. This was evidence gathering for someone else's case. After I drove across town to a private clinic, Dr. Sarah Chan specialized in geriatric psychiatry with an impeccable reputation. I paid $2,800 cash for comprehensive evaluation, cognitive testing, memory assessment, psychiatric screening. 3 hours later, Dr. Chan handed me her report. Mr. Bennett, I'm not sure why you felt this was necessary, but I can tell you definitively you're in excellent cognitive health. Your memory, reasoning, and executive function all test above average for someone in their 60s. No evidence of dementia, Alzheimer's, or any cognitive impairment. I took the report. Would you testify to that in court if needed? She raised an eyebrow. Family dispute. You could say that, then yes, I'd testify. This is my professional opinion. Tuesday morning I called Victoria Reed. She'd been a colleague when I was on the bench. Sharp, tenacious, with a reputation for winning difficult cases, elder rights specialist. Her downtown office had views of the Willamette. She greeted me warmly, but her eyes were assessing. Edward, you sounded serious.
What's going on?
I laid it out, everything. The financial documents, isolation tactics, Martha's revelation, the medical appointments, Ethan's recordings. Victoria listened without interrupting, her expression darkening. When I finished, she sat back. Edward, I'll be honest, guardianship cases are difficult to defend, even for someone with your background. Once a petition is filed, you're already defensive. My heart sank, however, she continued, eyes gleaming. Everything you've told me changes that. If Derek's already shopping the house around, that shows intent before legal authority. The recordings demonstrate real motives. Your independent evaluation undermines any competency claim. She leaned forward. This isn't guardianship, this is fraud, attempted theft through legal manipulation.
Can we prove it? Can we prove it?
She smiled, the smile of a lawyer who'd found her opponent's weakness. Edward, we don't just have a case, we have a slam dunk. I'm going to enjoy taking them down. For the first time in weeks the weight lifted. I had evidence, an ally, justice on my side. There's one more thing, I said. My grandson Ethan made those recordings. If this goes to court, we'll protect him, Victoria said firmly. That kid did something incredibly brave. He deserves better than parents who'd steal from his grandfather. Walking out of Victoria's office, I felt transformed. Not the victim, not the prey. I was back to being what I'd been for 30 years. Someone who understood exactly how the system worked. Derek thought he was hunting me. He had no idea he'd walked into a trap of his own making. The game was about to get interesting. Wednesday evening, June 25th, I was in my study when I heard the front door slam. Derek's footsteps had that particular weight to them, the walk of someone who thought they'd already won. At dinner, he didn't even wait for everyone to sit down. He pulled a thick document from his briefcase and dropped it on the table like a winning hand in poker. The sound made Caroline jump. Petition for appointment of guardian due to incapacity. I read aloud from the cover page. My voice was steady, but my mind was racing. He'd actually done it, filed with the court. Nothing personal, Edward, Derek said, his tone dripping with false concern. Someone needs to look after you. You're not the man you used to be. I looked at my daughter. Caroline was staring at her plate, her face pale. Ethan's hands were clenched into fists under the table. I could see his knuckles white against his jeans. I picked up the document, reading through it slowly. Derek had claimed I was unable to manage my personal affairs or property, that I exhibited signs of cognitive decline, that I required constant supervision, all lies of course, but dressed up in legal language and backed by Dr. Morrison's carefully worded evaluation. Interesting, I said, setting the papers down. Tell me, Derek, are you aware that filing a false petition with the court can have serious consequences? He laughed, actually laughed. It's not false, I have a doctor's report.
Do you?
Not a question. I looked him in the eye. Well, see about that. Something in my tone must have gotten through because his smile faltered for just a second, but then he recovered, standing up. The hearing is July 15th. I suggest you prepare yourself for reality, Edward. This house, your assets, someone competent needs to manage them. That someone is me. After he left the room, I sat there in the silence. Caroline finally looked at me. Dad, I don't, I said quietly, unless you're about to tell me you had nothing to do with this, I don't want to hear it. She said nothing. That was answer enough. Thursday morning, I called Victoria from my locked study. He filed. I know, I got the notification an hour ago. I could hear papers shuffling. Edward, are you ready for this? Once we file our response, there's no going back. This becomes a war. It's already a war. I just intend to win it. Good, come to my office. We have work to do. At Victoria's downtown office, I paid her retainer. $15,000 from my savings. The number made me wince, but this was my life on the line, my home, my dignity. Here's what we're going to do, Victoria said, spreading documents across her conference table. We're not just defending against his petition. We're attacking his motives. We're going to show the court exactly what Derek really wants. She outlined the strategy. We'd file a response that not only denied the incompetency claims but also raised questions about Derek's financial interest in the outcome. We demand full disclosure of his debts, his correspondence with real estate agents, his financial situation. It's aggressive, she admitted, but guardianship cases are won or lost on motive. If we can show the judge that Derek has a financial incentive to control your assets, that undermines everything he claims about concern for your
welfare. How long do we have?
The hearing is July 15th, less than 3 weeks. She looked at me seriously. Edward, I need to ask, are you absolutely certain about Ethan's recordings? Because if we use them, if we bring him into this, there's no protecting him from the fallout. Ethan came to me, I said. He recorded them because he knew what they were doing was wrong. That kid has more integrity than both his parents combined. Then we keep him as our secret weapon. We don't mention the recordings in our filing. We let Derek feel confident, and then at the hearing we show the judge what Derek really is. Friday, Victoria filed our response. It was a masterpiece of legal aggression. Not only did we deny every claim in Derek's petition, but we also filed counter-allegations of attempted fraud, requested an investigation into Derek's financial motives, and demanded that the court examine whether this was a legitimate guardianship petition or an attempt to seize assets through legal manipulation. When I got home that afternoon, the house felt different, charged, dangerous. Derek was waiting in the living room. When he saw me, he stood up, his face red. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" He waved a copy of our filing. "Counter-allegations? An investigation into my finances? This is about you, old man, not me."
Is it?
I kept my voice calm, because from where I'm standing, this seems to be very much about you, Derek, about your debts, about your plans for my house. You have no proof of anything, don't I? I smiled. "I guess we'll find out on July 15th. "You're going to lose," he hissed, "and when you do, I'm putting you in the cheapest nursing home I can find. You'll rot there." "Such concern for my welfare," I said dryly, "really warms the heart." He stormed out. I stood there listening to his car peel out of the driveway. Ethan appeared in the doorway, his face worried. "Grandpa, he's really angry." "Good," I said. "Angry people make mistakes, and I'm counting on him making plenty." The weekend transformed the house into a war zone, where every glance was a weapon and every silence carried weight. Wednesday morning, July the 2nd, I heard Derek's footsteps outside my study. The door handle turned, locked. A pause, then his voice sharp with irritation. "What's this, Edward? You're locking doors now." I opened it just enough to see his face. "Yes, Derek, from you." His jaw clenched. "That's real mature, like a child." "Funny," I said. "I was thinking the same thing about filing false court petitions." I closed the door before he could respond. Through the wood I heard him slam his fist against the wall.
Small victories.
Thursday afternoon, Caroline approached me in the kitchen. She looked pale, thinner than I remembered, dark circles under her eyes. "Dad," she said quietly, "can we talk about what? How you're helping your husband steal my home." She flinched. "Please, maybe we can stop this. The lawsuit, all of it, it's wrong." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. For a moment I saw the girl she used to be, the one who'd bring me coffee while I prepared cases, the one who believed in fairness and justice because she'd watched me fight for it every day. "Caroline," I said gently, "if you'd come to me alone without this guardianship circus, we could have talked, we could have worked something out, but you and Derek crossed a line. He said you'd be better off with someone managing. Don't," my voice hardened, "don't repeat his lies to me. You know better, you've always known better." She started crying, turned and left. I wanted to call her back, I didn't. Friday brought unexpected good news. The mail included Dr. Alina Hart's official psychiatric evaluation, the one the court had ordered. I opened it in my study. Victoria on speakerphone. "Patient demonstrates age-appropriate cognitive function." I read aloud, "Slight reduction in processing speed consistent with 67 years of age, but no clinical evidence of incapacity, dementia, or impaired judgment." Victoria's laugh was sharp with satisfaction. That's a dagger in Derek's case. His own court-appointed expert just contradicted his entire petition. How badly does this hurt him? Badly. The judge will see that a neutral professional found you completely competent. Derek's only evidence now is a biased doctor he handpicked and some vague testimony about forgetfulness. It's not enough, not nearly enough. I felt something loosen in my chest. So we're winning. Let's say we're positioned well. But Edward, stay sharp, cornered animals bite. She was right. Derek's mood that weekend was volcanic. He moved through the house like a storm system, slamming drawers, muttering into his phone. I caught fragments. "Can't let this happen, everything we've planned." Saturday and Sunday I spent hours with Victoria at her office. We went over every question I might face, every angle Derek's lawyer might attack from, every detail of my testimony. "You'll be under oath," Victoria reminded me. "Derek's attorney will try to make you look confused, forgetful, unable to manage complex matters. You need to be sharp. Precise. Show the judge who you really are." "I spent 30 years on the bench, Victoria. I know how to handle a courtroom." "Yes, but this time you're not the judge, you're the witness. Can you keep your emotions in check when they attack your competence, when they try to humiliate you?" I thought about Derek's sneer, his condescension, the way he'd called me old man like it was the worst insult he could imagine. 30 years in the robe taught me control. I said, "I'm ready." Monday, July 7th, the day before trial, I was in the kitchen making coffee when Derek walked in. He looked different, tired, maybe even desperate. "Edward," he said, "we need to talk. We're talking in court tomorrow." "Wait." He held up his hands. "Just listen. We can end this right now. You sign a limited power of attorney giving me authority to help manage the property and finances. We withdraw the petition. Everyone moves on." I turned to face him fully. "Everyone moves on. You mean you get control of my assets and I just, what?" "Trust that you'll be fair. It's better than court, better than airing family problems in public. For you maybe." I poured my coffee slowly. "Here's my counter offer. You withdraw your petition, move out of my house within 30 days and we never speak of this again." His face reddened. You stubborn old fool, you're going to lose tomorrow, and when you do I'll make sure what? I kept my voice level, that I rot in the cheapest facility you can find. You already told me that, remember? He stepped closer. For a second I thought he might actually take a swing, but he just stared at me with pure hatred. Tomorrow, he said, tomorrow you'll see. I met his eyes without blinking. Derek, tomorrow you'll learn what happens when you underestimate your opponent. You forgot something important. What's that? I spent 30 years watching people lie in court. I know every trick, every manipulation, every tell. I set down my coffee cup. You're playing a game you can't win, and tomorrow you'll understand just how badly you've miscalculated. He left without another word. That night I barely slept, not from fear, from anticipation. Everything came down to the next day, all the preparation, all the evidence, Ethan's courage, Victoria's strategy. I lay in bed thinking about justice. Real justice, not the kind that comes from revenge or anger, but the kind that comes from truth, from exposing lies and manipulation to the light. Tomorrow the truth would come out, and Derek would finally face consequences for his actions. I was ready. Tuesday, July 15th, 9 a.m. Multnomah County Courthouse, Portland. The courtroom was smaller than I remembered from my time on the bench. Strange how different it looked from this side of the rail. Victoria sat beside me, her papers organized with military precision. Across the aisle Derek and Caroline with their attorney, a thin man named Mitchell who specialized in elder law. The bailiff called us to order. All rise. The Honorable Marcus Wilson presiding. Judge Wilson entered, 61, gray at the temples, with that particular expression judges develop after years of hearing every possible variety of lie. I'd worked with Marcus decades ago. He was fair. That's all I needed.
Be seated.
Wilson surveyed the courtroom. This is in re-guardianship of Edward Bennett. We're here on a petition filed by Mr. Derek Lawson seeking appointment as guardian over the person and estate of Mr. Bennett due to alleged incapacity. Are both parties ready? Mitchell stood. Ready for petitioner, Your Honor. Ready for respondent, Victoria said. Proceed, Mr. Mitchell. Derek's attorney opened with a medical report from Dr. Morrison, the young doctor Derek had selected. Evidence shows cognitive decline typical of advanced age, confusion about appointments, difficulty managing complex financial matters. Your Honor, Mr. Bennett needs assistance. Then came testimony from two neighbors I barely recognized. They claimed I'd seemed confused and withdrawn recently. Victoria made notes but didn't object. She was waiting. Finally Derek took the stand. Mitchell led him through a rehearsed narrative. Mr. Lawson, please describe your concerns about your father-in-law. Your Honor, I love Edward. Derek's voice dripped with false sincerity, but he's not managing well. He forgets appointments, gets confused about dates, needs constant attention. My wife and I live with him to help, but he needs more than we can provide. He needs professional care. I watched him lie, smooth, practiced, almost believable. Then Victoria stood for cross-examination. Mr. Lawson, she said pleasantly, let's talk about your financial situation. Mitchell jumped up. Objection. Relevance, Your Honor. Victoria said, motive is absolutely relevant to this petition. If Mr. Lawson has a financial interest in controlling Mr. Bennett's assets, the court needs to know. Wilson nodded. Overruled. The witness will answer. Derek shifted in his seat. I don't see how my finances matter here. Then let me clarify. Victoria pulled out documents. You currently have $180,000 in debt, correct? Private, it's a yes or no question. Derek's jaw tightened. Yes. Your employment at Cascade Financial is in jeopardy due to client complaints. Yes or no? There have been some misunderstandings. Yes or no, Mr. Lawson?
Yes, he hissed.
Victoria held up printed emails. On June 10th, 5 days before the incident that allegedly started your concern about Mr. Bennett, you emailed a real estate agent about selling his house. You discussed a target price of $820,000 and mentioned needing to move quickly once guardianship is established. Did you send this email? The courtroom went silent. Derek's face drained of color. I was just exploring options, in case you successfully took control of his property. Victoria's voice was sharp now. Before you even filed this petition, you were planning to sell his home, a home worth $850,000. A sum that would conveniently cover your $180,000 debt with plenty left over. Objection. Mitchell was red-faced. Counsel is badgering the witness. Sustained. Wilson looked at Derek with new interest. But Mr. Lawson, you will answer the question. Did you contact a real estate agent about selling Mr. Bennett's property before filing this petition? Derek looked trapped. Yes, but only because, that's sufficient, Wilson said coldly. Continue, Miss Reed. Victoria pressed harder. You live in Mr. Bennett's house rent-free, correct? Yes, for 3 years. Yes, and during that time how much have you contributed to mortgage, taxes, or maintenance? Silence, Mr. Lawson. We help around the house. Is that a zero, Mr. Lawson? In 3 years you've contributed zero to housing costs. Objection. Mitchell again. Overruled. Answer the question. 0, Derek admitted. Victoria paused, letting it sink in. So you've lived free for 3 years in a house worth $850,000. You have $180,000 in debt, your job is failing, and you contacted real estate agents before filing this petition, and you want this court to believe your motive is concern for Mr. Bennett's welfare. Derek's face twisted with anger and fear. I was trying to help. No further questions. Victoria sat down. The judge looked at Derek like he was seeing something distasteful. You may step down, Mr. Lawson. Derek stumbled back to his seat. Caroline wouldn't look at him. Up in the gallery, I caught a glimpse of Ethan sitting perfectly still watching his father's humiliation. Wilson checked his watch. We'll break for lunch, resume at 1:30. As people filed out, Victoria squeezed my shoulder. That went well, better than well, but we're not done. After lunch you testify, and then Ethan, I finished. If Wilson allows it, Ethan's recordings will end this. But Victoria, watching your grandson testify against his parents. He knows what he's doing, I said. He's braver than any of us. Victoria nodded. Then let's finish this. The afternoon session would decide everything. Derek was wounded, but cornered animals fight hardest, and somewhere in the gallery my 11-year-old grandson waited with a tablet full of truth. Justice was coming, I could feel it. After lunch the courtroom felt different, charged. Everyone knew something was coming, though only Victoria, Ethan, and I knew what. Judge Wilson called us back. Mr. Bennett, please take the stand. I walked to the witness box feeling 30 years of courtroom experience settle around me like armor. Derek's attorney Mitchell approached with the confidence of someone who thought he'd already won. He was wrong. For 40 minutes he tried to trip me up, asked about my daily routine, my finances, my memory. I answered every question precisely, completely, with just enough detail to demonstrate perfect recall. When he asked about confusion over appointments I smiled. I believe you're referring to the appointment that was cancelled without my knowledge. I have phone records showing I never made that cancellation call. Mitchell's confidence flickered. Do you ever forget things, Mr. Bennett?
Occasionally, don't you?
The gallery laughed. Wilson didn't silence them. Mitchell tried harder, but I'd spent 3 decades watching lawyers work. I knew every trick, every trap, and I sidestepped them all. When he finally gave up, Victoria stood. Your Honor, the defense would like to call an additional witness. At this late stage Wilson frowned. It's critical to the case, Your Honor. Who is this witness? Ethan Lawson, the petitioner's son. The courtroom erupted. Derek shot to his feet. Objection, that's my son. He's been manipulated by. Sit down, Mr. Lawson. Wilson's voice cracked like a whip. I'll decide whether to hear from the witness. He looked toward the gallery. Young man, please approach. Ethan stood. I watched him walk forward, trembling slightly but with his chin up. 11 years old and braver than most adults I'd known. Wilson's voice gentled. What's your name, son? Ethan Lawson, Your Honor. How old are you? 11. And you want to tell the court something? Ethan nodded, then found his voice. Your Honor, can I show you something my dad doesn't know about? The courtroom went silent. Even the court reporter stopped typing for a second. What is it? Wilson asked. Ethan pulled out his tablet. Videos. I recorded them. My parents thought I was sleeping or playing games, but I heard what they said about Grandpa. I recorded it because his voice wavered, because it was wrong. Mitchell jumped up. Objection. This violates privacy laws. Wilson raised his hand. In Oregon, one-party consent recording is legal in one's own home. If the boy made these recordings himself, they're admissible. He looked at Ethan. Son, did anyone tell you to make these recordings? No, Your Honor. I did it myself because I love my grandpa and they were lying about him. Wilson studied Ethan for a long moment. Then he nodded. Show us. Ethan's hands shook as he connected the tablet to the courtroom's display system. Victoria helped him. The screen flickered to life. The first video showed Derek on his phone pacing in our backyard. The audio was clear. Yeah, the guardianship petition is filed. Once it goes through we can list the house immediately. Target price is $820,000. The old man won't know what happened. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. I watched Derek's face drain of color. The second video showed Caroline in our kitchen talking to someone on her phone. Dad's becoming such a burden. He can't manage on his own anymore. Thank heavens Derek knows how to handle these things. Once the guardianship is in place we can finally move forward. Caroline was crying now, her hands over her face, but the third video was the one that sealed everything. Derek standing outside my study door, his voice raised in anger. Ethan must have been in the hallway. You think you can fight this old man? You've got nothing. Soon you'll be doing exactly what I say, living where I tell you to live, and that house, that's mine. It was always going to be mine. The courtroom was silent except for Caroline sobbing. I looked at Derek. His face was white, his hands gripping the table so hard his knuckles had gone bloodless. Wilson turned to him slowly. Mr. Lawson, I have serious questions about your motivations in filing this petition. Derek tried to speak but nothing came out. Wilson looked at Ethan. Son, these recordings, were they edited in any way? No, Your Honor. They're exactly as I recorded them, and you made them of your own choice. No one asked you to. Yes, Your Honor. My grandpa didn't even know about them until a few weeks ago. Wilson nodded. Thank you, Ethan. You've been very brave. You may return to your seat. As Ethan walked past his parents, Caroline reached for him. "Ethan, please." He pulled away, walked back to the gallery without looking at her. Wilson addressed the courtroom. "I'm going to recess for the day, but Mr. Lawson, Ms. Lawson, your attorney. I want all of you in my chambers in 30 minutes. We need to discuss what I just saw." He looked at Victoria and me. "Miss Reed, Mr. Bennett, you're invited as well." The gavel fell. Alan sat frozen in his chair. Around him people were whispering, pointing. His perfect plan had shattered in front of a room full of witnesses. Victoria squeezed my shoulder. "We won, Edward," but I was watching Ethan sitting alone on the gallery bench. He just testified against his own parents. That took courage I couldn't begin to measure. I walked over to him. "You okay?" He looked up at me with those serious eyes. "Did I do the right thing, Grandpa?" I sat beside him. "You told the truth. That's always the right thing. Mom's crying." "I know, does that make me bad?" "No, Ethan, it makes you honest and brave, braver than most people could ever be." He leaned against me and I put my arm around him. "My grandson, my ally, the one who'd saved us both, tomorrow would bring the final judgment." But in that moment I knew we'd already won. Not through revenge, not through cruelty, but through justice, through evidence and truth, and the courage to stand up in court and say, "This is wrong." Sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes that's everything. August 12, 2025, final hearing. A month had passed since Ethan's videos had detonated in that courtroom. Wilson had ordered a full investigation into Derek's conduct, and the results were devastating. The courtroom was packed again, but the atmosphere had changed. Last time people had been curious. Today they were here for judgment. Wilson entered, his face set in stern lines. We all stood, then sat. He shuffled papers for a moment, then looked up. "I've reviewed all the evidence presented in this matter. The court-ordered investigation, the financial records, the witness statements, and most significantly the video recordings provided by Ethan Lawson." He paused. "I've also reviewed evidence of forged documents, fabricated witness testimony, and an attempt to bribe a medical expert." Derek sat perfectly still. Caroline stared at her lap. "The petition filed by Derek Lawson seeking guardianship over Edward Bennett is denied in its entirety. The evidence overwhelmingly demonstrates that Mr. Bennett is fully competent to manage his own affairs." Relief washed over me, but Wilson wasn't finished. "More troubling is the evidence of fraudulent intent. Mr. Lawson, you filed this petition while secretly planning to sell Mr. Bennett's property. You falsified medical concerns while Mr. Bennett's own evaluations showed perfect cognitive function. You attempted to isolate him from friends and support systems." Wilson's voice hardened. "This wasn't about concern for an elderly family member. This was about greed." "Your Honor," Derek started. "I'm not finished." Wilson's glare could have cut glass. "I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for investigation of potential criminal charges including attempted fraud, elder abuse and perjury." Derek's face went gray. Additionally, Wilson continued, "I'm issuing a restraining order preventing Mr. Lawson from any financial transactions involving Mr. Bennett's property. I'm also ordering Mr. and Mrs. Lawson to vacate Mr. Bennett's residence within 30 days. Caroline let out a sob. Derek just sat there looking like he'd been hit by a truck. "This court is adjourned." The gavel fell. People started filing out. Victoria was grinning, accepting congratulations from colleagues, but I was focused on Derek, who was stumbling toward the door. I followed him into the courthouse hallway. He was leaning against the wall, his lawyer talking urgently into his phone. "Derek," he turned. For a moment I saw real fear in his eyes. I walked up to him, slowly looked him in the eye. When I spoke, my voice was quiet, calm, without anger. "You forgot I was a judge for 30 years. He opened his mouth to respond, but I continued. "You lost before you even started." I turned and walked away. Behind me I heard him try to say something, but the words dissolved into incoherent sounds. Ethan was waiting by the courtroom door. "Grandpa, is it over?"
"It's over. Did we win?"
I knelt down to his level. "We did more than win, Ethan. We restored justice. That's better than any victory. What happens now?"
"Now?"
I stood, taking his hand. "Now we figure out what comes next. You and me. Mom and Dad have to leave." "Yes, where will I go?" "The question I've been dreading. That's complicated. But I'll fight for you, Ethan. If you want that, I want to stay with you. Then that's what we'll do." We walked out of the courthouse into brilliant August sunshine. The air smelled like summer and possibility. Behind us lay betrayal, deception, a family fractured beyond repair. But ahead was uncertain. Caroline would have to make choices about her marriage, her son, her relationship with me. Derek faced potential criminal charges. The house would be quiet again, maybe too quiet, but I had Ethan and he had me, and together we'd shown that truth and justice could still prevail. A reporter approached, but I waved her off. This wasn't about publicity. It was about a grandfather protecting his grandson and himself from people who'd mistaken kindness for weakness. We walked to my car, still mine, still under my control, still my home waiting for us. Ethan climbed in, buckling his seatbelt. As I started the engine, I thought about the past 2 months. The fear, the anger, the careful planning, the satisfaction of watching Derek's scheme crumble. But mostly I thought about Ethan's courage. 11 years old, testifying against his own parents because it was the right thing to do. If that wasn't justice, I didn't know what was. I pulled out of the parking lot, heading home. Our home, protected, secure, won through truth and the unexpected bravery of a child who understood right from wrong better than the adults around him. the game was over and we'd won, not through revenge, not through cruelty, but through justice, through evidence and truth, and the courage to stand up in court and say this is wrong. Sometimes that's all it takes, sometimes that's everything. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.